I like Weezer. I think they're a really good band. Hell, they're one of my favorite bands of the 90s. Their first two albums, fucking phenomenal. Loved the fuck out of them. Blue and Pinkerton. Blue being my favorite out of the two and my favorite Weezer album ever. Yes, it's not Pinkerton. You Pinkerton nerds can all get mad at me all you want. I don't give a shit. Blue is always going to be the better album for me. For Green, I actually like that album. A lot of people don't. A lot of Weezer fans don't like that album, but I did. I liked a handful of songs off that album. Like half of the album I enjoyed, so it was a solid album. Not in my opinion. Maladroit was a better album. I liked most of the album. It was really good. Make Believe. This is the start of the downfall. I only like two songs on Make Believe, and neither of them are Beverly Hills. Fuck that song. Red Album. It was actually really good. Unpopular opinion, I know, but I really liked Red Album. I really liked the direction they went in that album. It was very different from the rest of their discography. Rivers Cuomo, the lead singer and guitarist of the group, lets other members of the group sing lead on a song or play a different instrument. Like, for example, on the song Automatic, the drummer, Patrick Wilson, sings lead on the song and plays guitar in that song, and Rivers Cuomo takes a back seat and plays drums on the track, and you don't hear him at all on the track, I don't believe. So again, I like the risk this album took, and I like the different direction it went in. It definitely felt fresh and new, and it was a really good Weezer album, with the exception of Everybody Got Dangerous, because that song was absolute horseshit. Very unpopular opinion, I know. A lot of Weezer fans hate this album, but I personally really enjoyed it. Gratitude... Oh, worst Weezer album to date. Every single song I hated on that album, with the exception of a bonus song called "The Story of My Life," but I don't really count that since again it's a bonus song. It's not part of the main album. So every song of the main album I fucking hated, especially that collaboration they did with Lil Wayne. Easily the worst Weezer song in existence, and I'm just going to keep my thoughts on that album brief because I just hate it so much and it angers me so much when I think about it. Hurley, it was alright. It was decent. I liked a few songs on there. Again, some songs on that album were shit, like a lot of other Weezer albums, but it still was decent at best and leagues better than Ratitude was. And then we come to their previous two albums. Everything Will Be Alright in the End and the White Album. These albums are honestly the best albums they made since Blue and Pinkerton. They were fucking phenomenal, and it really did show that the band was back and actually taking themselves seriously again and making good music again. Until this album. This album is a huge fucking disappointment. Pacific Daydream. This album came off the heels of the White Album, which, like I said just a few seconds ago, was a fucking great album, and even better than Everything Will Be Alright in the end, in my opinion. That Weezer album was just everything a Weezer album should be, and this album is just the complete opposite of that. This album just feels like an obvious cash grab. Weezer's trying to get the cool kids, the teenagers listening to them because they're not cool anymore, and they haven't been cool in like nearly 20 years. And I fucking hate it when bands try to switch up their sounds just to cash in on this pop trend and try to appeal to teenagers and the kids because, again, they haven't been relevant in decades. And, like, I'm fine with bands changing their sounds. I'm fine with bands evolving and all that. But when it's just an obvious cash grab just to try to be popular, just to try to gain relevancy again, I'm fucking against it because, again, it's obviously just slapped together. They obviously don't give a shit about the music anymore. And all they care about is just the money at that point. This album is very reminiscent of Ratitude. Like I said a minute ago, was my least favorite Weezer album by a long shot, and it's mainly because of what this album did. It tried to cash in on the whole pop sound, and this album was trying to do that same exact thing. And the funny thing is, they even admitted Ratitude was a fuck-up, so that makes this album all the more insulting that they would even try it again and do the same mistakes that they were doing in the late 2000s. Hell, they even released this album a year after their previous album, like I said it before, and they did the same thing in the late 2000s. Red was released in 2008, Ratitude was released in 2009, and Hurley was released in 2010. And then there's a 4-year gap between Hurley and Everything Will Be Alright in the end. So are they starting to rush out albums again like they did previously? Because for real, who the fuck is asking for a Weezer album every fucking year? I don't think anyone is forcing them, and I don't really see any fans out there saying, Weezer, please release an album every year, please. We want a new album every year. I don't see any of that. Or maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. I don't fucking know, but I'd rather a band take their time, to write their music, make the album as good as possible, instead of just churning them out year after year like they were doing before. And again, they apologize for this era of their music. The song Back to the Shack being a prime example of this. So I hope this band gets their heads out of their asses before we have another dark period of Weezer, because I really don't want to see that again. I really don't want to see a repeat of how they were in the late 2000s and very early 2010s, because it seems like they're repeating the same mistakes that they apologized for. And them repeating said mistakes shows that they learned a jack fucking shit. And it's a huge slap in the face to fans like myself who thought this band was going to get better, who were promised that this band was going to get better. But no, they decided to repeat the same mistakes all over again with this album. Oh well, if this band wants to be shit again, then that's their call. It's their band. I can't dictate what they can do with their music, so what the fuck am I going to do about it? I mean, look at Attitude. Look how loved that album was. Obvious sarcasm aside, it's the most hated Weezer album, and it's still worse than this album, like I said earlier in this video, but that album also tried to do the whole pop thing, try to appeal to teenagers and the cool kids. And look how well that went. It was a huge fucking flop. No one liked it, and a huge chunk of their fan base gave up on them thanks to that album. I mean, Weezer, do you really want to go down that path again? You really want a Ratitude 2.0 and lose half of your fan base again like you did with that album? Because this album, the Pacific Daydream, it's really not liked. A lot of fans fucking hate it, and they hate that you're going down this path again. And when the first single to this album, back in March or April, whenever it came out, I listened to the first single, Feels Like Summer, and I listened to it and I was like, oh my fucking god, they're doing it again. They're trying to cash in on the whole pop craze again. And this band just doesn't seem to really learn from their mistakes. They really don't. But there is one song on the album that I do really like. It's the opener, Mexican Fender. I do really enjoy that song. It's by no means a great song. The music video for that song is fucking terrible, but that's a completely different thing. It's nice, it's catchy, it's a very summer feel to it. Come to think of it, this whole album has a summer feel to it, which is weird because this album came out in late October. Actually, I remember the day Mexican Fender and a few other singles to the album came out. I listened to Mexican Fender. It was a weekday morning. I got off the bus, was walking to my school, was waiting outside for the doors to open, and it was fucking freezing out, and I was listening to Mexican Fender, and I was like, why is this album coming out now? I mean, again, it has a very summer feel. The singles that were released on the album did have a summer feel, and I was like, why is it coming out now? And especially the morning I was listening to this song for the first time, it was fucking freezing out. I had a hoodie on. It really wasn't summer at all. It really didn't feel like summer at all. It's just really weird the band decided to release an album like this in fall, but whatever, the release date is really the least of this album's problems anyway. Whatever, review over, if you could really call this a review. This isn't like an in-depth reviewer or anything. I'm not a professional reviewer or anything. This is really the first time I'm giving my opinion on an album on video. So anyway, to any Weezer fan who might be watching this and who might be angry at me for not liking this album, go fuck yourself. I don't give a shit. As long as you respect my opinion, I respect yours. It's really that simple. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.